This is We the Sales Engineers Podcast, show 171.
Welcome to We the SEs Podcast, the show for sales engineers by sales engineers with your host, Ramzi Majraba.
What's up, SE family? Welcome back to another episode. I am your host, Ramzi Majraba. Yeah, I guess I don't give myself nicknames. And my co-host, Bini, I just woke up after playing a late game of basketball, tired, Kanungo. Sounds accurate?
But yeah, all good.
What did I say?
Basketball.
Oh, no, I would never suspect you play basketball. I don't know why.
Back in the day, I used to play in my
I think it's the beard that's throwing me off. Like,
isn't like Andre like Valenchu something or another had a beard?
Valanciunas?
Yeah. Did he have a beard?
Yeah, but it's tidy.
Yes. No, true. Yeah.
I think your beard will get in the way of your shot.
Yeah, it could potentially. You
might get block your own shot. Like,
it's great on defense, kind of like put this.
So far your beard is a very great guitarist, and now it plays basketball. That's perfect. It's a good defender.
How was it?
Right, so we don't have a guest today. It's just Benny and I, and we're going to be discussing some mental hurdles that some sales engineers run into. And if you're in that situation, hopefully we'll offer a solution. If you're not in that situation and you know somebody who is, either share that with them, or you have some information as well to talk about with that person. All right, so we have a list of 5. It could probably go more, but we are limited with time. So the first one that I have, and that's usually common with early on SEs, and I don't know, you've been an SE for a few years, Benny, but I don't know if you remember when you first started, and that the customer is always right. Have you seen that? Did you feel that?
Well, it's kind of like a two-pronged, maybe multifaceted thing for me personally. So I first had my first, I guess, challenge of the whole customer is always right mentality back in like one of my first few jobs back when I was 15 working in the service industry. So you learn pretty quick in the service industry that the customer is not always right and that you can't cater to them. However, in the sales engineering world, while that same mentality is still definitely like that same idea about the customer's not right, as we'll talk about, is there, I think that there are some different reasons why someone could think that they are always right. So for me personally, coming into a company, I guess, whether it be in a space I was familiar with or not, particularly if I'm not familiar with it, a company might explain their process and their way of doing a certain thing that whatever software I'm peddling isn't necessarily the best fit for. And at first, I would feel a little bit bad about the fact that like we don't do it exactly like you need it to be done or the way you're currently doing it. I guess we're not going to fit the bill. But then, as time goes on, you definitely learn that, they're not always right. And it could be that your software is the change they need to be better.
Yeah. And it's like when you go to a store and everybody talks about, oh, the customer is always right. I mean, if the customer is always right, they probably won't need sales engineers. And it's just, they're right. Why do you need me? The challenge is overcoming that thought initially that the customer is always right, and also learning how to gently and politely inform the customers that you may have been right, but there are better ways now. Like, we are in the industry. You know your business very well. I've worked with multiple customers, and this is how we've helped them in the past, and this is how we can help you. Versus, it doesn't have to be confrontational or argumentative. And we talked about this with Doug Brown. Like, if a customer brings up a point that we don't agree with and they're not right about, instead of becoming or argumentative, take a deep breath, think of where they're coming from, and try to address that, versus getting into a fight with them or agreeing with them that they're right, because they're not. Again, if customers were always right, we would be out of a job, right? Especially right now with like product-led sales, where people can go in and download the product and just use it, but they don't, like, we use it on a day-to-day basis. We know how it's used by other customers. They just downloaded it and tried it out while they're doing their other job. Like, their job isn't to actually play with it 24/7. Their job is to get their situation up and running, or whatever it is. So that's where our expertise comes in. That's how we can handle customers not being always right.
Makes perfect sense. Yeah, especially like I think a lot of people listen. Actually, I shouldn't say that, but I'd imagine a lot of people that listen to the show are in the B2B space. Sure, there's a lot of probably B2Cs as well, but I feel like in the B2B space, especially just because I don't think software is as intuitive all the time as it perhaps is on the average as it is for B2C. I'm just thinking if I guess from a software perspective. Sorry, I should be more both software and hardware, but in general, like you said, oh, sorry. Go
It's
ahead.
easier. I would focus on software because for hardware, we have the customer doesn't have the hardware. Like
Sure.
the sellers have the hardware, and they don't get to play with it the same way they would get to play with software. So I agree with you about it being more of a software situation. But go ahead.
Fair enough. Yeah, so it's just that idea of that exactly what you said, right? Like a sales engineer, like you spend time to get to know your software, knowing the ins and outs and what it's possible, or rather what it's able to do. But if you give that same software to some like random person who might be interested in the software for their own purposes, but don't have the ins and outs or the knowledge rather to know how it works, they'll see it and probably think that like, oh yeah, this doesn't do what I need it to do at all. Where in reality, it probably actually does.
Yeah,
I like that, just kind of like holding their hand, just bringing them into the know, I guess, or kind of yeah, that whole thing about doing it gently is a
it's
good way to.
being the advisor, the trusted advisor, the consultant versus, and I've seen this in my company. Like I'm rubbing my head because it annoys me so much. Where the customers are, oh, can we try this out? Yeah, here's 10 licenses. Try it out. Like, wait, what are they trying out? Who's going to support them when they're trying it out? So I guess that's a mistake that a lot of SEs do, where they just provide licenses without any information of what they're going to try out, what their success criteria is, would they buy after they try it out. There's a whole bunch of stuff that goes into a proof of concept kind of uh, agreement, if you will.
Yeah. Do you think that kind of comes with the idea of like I don't know, I guess like a not as mature and then a more mature SC or even salesperson in general, that whole concept. But I guess like, hear me out. So it's more so the concept about throwing it over the fence, where like, even just thinking about it just in like a normal flow, perhaps where pre-sales typically deals with pre-sales and they throw it over the fence and then it's implementation and customer success is issue after that. Whereas like the more mature thing to probably do is to kind of stay with that deal for a little bit during implementation and I guess, be that transition or be that constant. And
Well,
so kind
there's a difference between implementation and proof of concept, right?
of,
Proof of
right.
concept.
It's more so like the behavior of the sales engineer though to be involved even after the initial like activity. So say for the proof of concept example, for example, they might feel that it's appropriate to just give them access to this trial or give them a whole bunch of licenses and then just let it go. Like, okay, sweet, I've done my job.
Yeah.
My part's done. But in reality, that's not the case. But I'm just thinking maybe they're thinking like that.
Well, I don't know what they're thinking. Maybe they're thinking, oh, the customer knows what they want, and they know what they're doing, and they're just like, or I don't have time to hold you. Here you go. Here are some 10 licenses to try it out. Uh, but from what I've seen, in the end, it's just a pain in the behind because you either have to re-up their subscription model, or like let's say their license expires, they have to re-up it and try again. There isn't a dedicated person who's going to test it out. It's just like there was no plan. And what are they going to try? Like, if you just give it to them with no plan of what they're going to try, they might be trying things that we don't support. And again, the customer's not always right. We don't support this stuff. If you wanted it, maybe you don't need to waste time trying our stuff. Go try somebody else's who has it. And, so like it's saving everybody time. So that's the concept of well, we can talk about like we did an entire podcast with Tony Matos about like a proof of concept, and we can talk about it again. We can talk about my process specifically about how to engage. But I've seen that mistake by SEs in my company where I'll give you 10 licenses, sure, try it out, and then we never hear back.
That makes sense. I think too, like keeping in the back of one's mind the idea of that there are just countless stories out there of customers that think they're right, go off and do something, whether it be like go off to a competitor or whatever, thinking that it's best for the company because they know best. And then like lo and behold, like 2 years later, they come running back to you saying, hey, like we really need this solution. We really screwed up with that last decision we made. Turns out you were right.
Well,
Happens a
yeah.
lot.
Well, it depends on the competitor, right? If the competitor does the job or not. Maybe the customer was right. Sometimes there are bad SEs and the customer is right, but they're not always right. I'm not saying they're never right. I'm just saying they're not always right. And like I worked in support, and trying to get information from customers was a pain because they would never give us the right information. Right? Yes. Let's move on to the second one, which also annoys me. So I've been coaching several SEs, and most SEs, generally speaking, the SEs who are listening to the podcast want to grow, want to learn. The SEs who want coaching want to grow, want to learn. I was helping a manager out, and he asked me to coach one of his SEs, and the response was, after a couple of sessions of me learning that this guy doesn't know much, he's like, okay, I don't have anything else to learn. And like and that's generally true. Some SEs early on in their career might think that.
Yeah.
If they're successful, like I didn't think I needed help. I was doing the spray and pray and I was hitting my quota. Why would I need help? It wasn't until the VP of sales came and told me, like, Ramsey, you suck. It's just all of us. I've been doing this for almost 8 years. Before that, I was a network architect, which meant I had similar job where I needed to go consult with customers, but it was more post-sales. So I would say I've been doing this for almost 10 years, and I feel like I still have a lot to learn. And every time, like, I talk to Chris White, I talk to John Kerr, I talk to Peter Cohen, I talk to you, Binny, not the audience. Like, I talk to a lot of people in the audience as well. And every time I talk to them, I learn something new. So the fact that some people think that, oh, I'm good, I'm done, they're gonna be in for a rude awakening later on down the line, or they're gonna switch jobs.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think it's funny actually. Like as soon as you said that, it's probably pretty common amongst those that are early in their careers. It really reminded me of that whole breakdown of like one's thought process, not thought process, but one's like awareness and like knowledge level of any new job, I suppose, like, or rather like when they get into a new job, because like there's a whole idea about that, like your known unknowns and your unknown unknowns.
Yeah,
and
like unaware, ignorant, aware, ignorant, and you get better. Yeah, yeah.
So some
Yeah.
of these people, like they, like you said, like they've gotten so far, and like before your boss told you that one time, like you had no idea that that's like spraying and praying wasn't a good idea, right? And like
Yeah, I didn't know what discovery was.
fair enough. Yeah, there you go. To keep the point.
I
So yeah,
have a funny story. After that, like, I started learning a lot, and we hired another SE in Toronto for that company, and he wasn't doing very well, and he was receiving constructive criticism by a bunch of different people. And I developed a relationship with him so I can help him, I can teach him. And after like a year of him being told, like, you're doing this incorrectly, do this differently, you're doing this wrong, learn about that, he comes to me and is like, hey, why is everybody critiquing me? I think I'm doing a great job.
I love
Like,
it.
hey, I don't think you're gonna last here. 2 weeks later, he got let go and they hired somebody else.
Was he not open to the feedback he was getting? Like it sounds like
I would give him feedback and he was fine with it. It's just, I don't think it registered in his head. I think he thought he was doing a great job. It was a mental block.
Yeah.
I'm doing a great job. I'm hitting he wasn't even hitting his quota, so I'm not sure why. Like, he made mistakes to the point where he would send LinkedIn invites during a call, like during a face-to-face meeting with a customer. And then the customer would say, did you just send me a LinkedIn invite? And he would not respond. Like, he would zone out.
Oh wow, he would be just in his own world.
He'd be in his own world. Like, people would have to call him by name. Can you answer this question? It's like, oh, sorry, I didn't hear that question. But yeah, so anyways.
Really funny.
Yeah.
I mean, I think some people, like you said, maybe they're just not the right fit for that role in the end. So they have
He left the role.
Yeah, he left the role.
He left the role. He's no longer working as a sales engineer.
That makes sense.
Just being bad at sales engineering doesn't mean you're a bad person or you're a bad employee, because he's excelling in his current role, right? He moved and he's working not with customers. He's doing, from what I hear, he's doing very well. I haven't seen him or haven't worked with him face to face. We've been talking, but so maybe this role is not for you. This role is not for everybody. And the funny part about it too is sometimes the generalist sales engineer role is not for everybody, but if you become a specialist within the same company on one product or one technology, you would excel. Maybe you just don't want to cover, or you don't have the mental capacity, or you are the kind of person who wants to dig in deep into your product. And if you have 10 products, now you have to dig in deep into 10 products and you won't have time and you won't learn anything. So, and that I guess we'll talk about that in a second if we have time. We have 10 minutes left for this call. Number tres, people think that there is no room to grow as a sales engineer. Now, you had a take on that earlier. You want to explain what you wanted to...
Look, I think it's actually kind of funny that we were just talking about what we were just talking about beforehand. I think it could potentially have to do with the whole idea of those unknowns, I guess. So the idea of no room to grow could be just a sales engineer is a sales engineer at an organization, and maybe there's no defined sales engineer progression path, I guess, for that person. So they may think, there's no room for me to grow. Or yeah, perhaps like I guess probably that's the main thing. But a sales engineer, we've talked about it so much on the show. It's such a versatile position. You're interacting with so many different, I guess, people across an organization. You had an amazing word or term. Do you mind if I steal it? I may steal it.
Go ahead. I have no idea what I was talking about, so go ahead.
Okay, amazing term. Your impact radius is huge as a sales engineer within an organization.
Yeah. It's not my term. It's a gentleman by the name of John White. He has a podcast. He works for Google as a sales engineer, and he has a podcast called Nerd Journey, and he talked to me about that. But yeah,
okay. Well, let's appropriate it, I guess. But yeah, no, thank you, John, for that great term. But yeah, so the impact radius of a sales engineer is quite large, and so there's so many different places within an organization that one can move. I guess as a sales engineer, once they were once a sales engineer, that they may not be aware of if they, I guess, didn't know that was a possibility. But even once you're no longer a sales engineer, all the expertise that one has, or all the different contacts that I think one had as a sales engineer, still very much apply in that other role. So yeah, so I think that it's just it's a matter of awareness, I guess.
Yeah. So like one thing is, there are some companies where you can grow, become a lead manager, director, VP, and all that. The problem with that's like for every 20 SEs, maybe there's one SE manager, and for every like 4 SE managers, there's one director. For every 3 directors, there's one VP. So it gets harder and harder to go up that. But that's with any role, really. That's the same. You can move roles, become a product manager, become product marketing, go into sales. Many SEs end up being in sales. But for those who don't want to, like, they love the SE role and they want to go up that stack of sales engineering, but there isn't, you can grow in your impact radius, as we were talking about. Like you can affect a lot more than just your team and your customers. Because I started the podcast, my impact radius grew, even within my own company, because now people talk about me in my own company. Like, oh, Ramsey has a podcast about sales engineering. Let's see what he thinks about this or that, or right. Like sales enablement comes to me and asks me questions about like the training or whatever. A manager came to me and asked me about like sales enablement for sales engineers. So sales engineering enablement.
Amazing.
So you can increase your impact. You don't have to have a podcast. You just have to do things that are visible and like care to help other people. And your impact radius will grow. Your title will not change, but you are growing within your role. And maybe one day, because you proved yourself, you would become, your title would change and monetary value would follow. The beauty about it is, as a sales engineer who is commission-based, that's not true for non-commission-based SEs. The more you sell, the more you impact the company, the more you make money, until the next year when they increase your quota. So that's the best part of sales. All right, let's see how many we could go through. Another mental hurdle. I work for salespeople. Did you have that?
Oh, I see it here.
No, you have that.
Got it. It's hard to say. So I think so in my first time as an SC, I was a one-to-many, that one-to-many relationship where it was like 1 to 15, 1 to 20, 1 to 35.
Wow.
So eventually it came to be like, it was a weird balance where I knew like I was kind of a demo jockey to some degree, but also like my time was also being prioritized to the higher accounts. And so salespeople were pretty cognizant about making sure that, I don't know, like that I was able to do the things that they weren't asking too much of me, I guess, and that we were able to do things somewhat collaboratively. But then as time got on, as I started to just get more mature in my role, that whole team dynamic became much stronger, just as I was able to provide more value to the calls independent of just being able to provide a demo.
Yeah.
And yeah, then it became much more of a team.
Yeah, well, you kind of changed it, right? You decided you don't work for the sales people. Like, just because they said come and do a demo doesn't mean you have to. Like, you are able to do a discovery beforehand. Um, for me, I worked one to one with one salesperson, and the guy always talked about how he'd been in the industry for 17 years and he's been successful for 17 years. By the way, that's the one salesperson that I don't like. Uh, uh, and I was brand new, so everything he told me when he said jump, I would say how high, uh, and then I would jump higher because like he's telling me to do things. But soon I learned like salespeople aren't always right either, right? It's not just the customers, and in fact they're wrong more often than not in front of the customers, especially that one. Maybe not others, but that one, that was a pain. Uh, and then I learned like, you know how Chris White talks about partnering. I learned that I'm a partner. They're the CEO of the region. I'm the CTO. I come up with this technical solutions that solve business problems, solve human problems, and the human part I added because of Doug Brown from a couple episodes ago. So like I really needed to learn to tell my sales guy like, no, this is not how we're going to do things, or maybe ask, why do you want to do it this way? Is there a better way to do it? Can we think of a different strategy? And then after he left, he he got promoted to director, which I'm still no. Most of the people in that company still ask me why was he promoted to director, and nobody has an answer. Um, anyways, they hired a new salesperson, and he took a partnership role with me. It was less of Ramsey, do this, do that. It's like, Ramsey, we need to do this. How should we do it, right? So and that changed that relationship, and I learned that I don't work for him. I work with him, and it's our job to be successful together, versus him being successful and I'm successful as a byproduct of that.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, and there's so much power to the whole SEing role when done properly. Like, one is the whole idea about, well, sales engineering, sales being in the title. So like being able to, once you know your worth and know your value, like you are still able to sell things. So being able to leverage that once you're confident to do so, but also that whole idea about an SE being the trusted advisor in the eyes of the prospect, like leveraging those two things, being the trusted advisor, but also still being explicitly a salesperson, is a really cool balance that's struck. And I think once sales engineers recognize that they have a lot of value that a salesperson just can't bring to the table just by virtue of their role. Yeah, that whole partnership, I think it has to come out naturally, I'd imagine. Otherwise, you're doing the team
Yeah,
disservice.
and good salespeople know how to leverage their SEs. Like sometimes I talked to you. I think you were on vacation or something. I talked to a couple of like a salesperson and an SE, uh, and they talked about how they were able to run discovery calls or whatever it is separately because they were so overloaded. And it's a skill for an SE to be able to do that. And it's a skill for a salesperson to be able to run like technical discoveries on their own. And now like they just doubled their capacity by just doing that, right? Anyways, last thing, we have 3 minutes left. This is a big one, is the thought that I can't make mistakes, right?
Oh.
It's like you start sweating, profusing, and like, oh, I can't make a mistake. I'm going to lose this big deal or whatever. What?
I thought like I can't make mistakes. Like same thing. Like I don't have anything else to learn. Like I can't make mistakes. What are you talking about?
No. It's the other way. It's being too afraid to make mistakes.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Which means you'll never learn. Which means you'll never take risks. And the only way to learn is to take risks and learn from failure. I mean, I didn't learn anything from success. Doing spray and pray for a year and a half and hitting quota, I was successful. I didn't learn anything from it. It wasn't until I failed and like I bombed in a spray and pray meeting in front of a customer who I was trying to show him hardware, and he's like, I'm not interested in hardware, I'm interested in software. And I'm like, but I don't have any spray and pray material prepared for your software. So there was that. But yeah, like we should be able to make mistakes and learn from it. If we're doing the same mistake over and over, then we're screwed. But we have to be able to make mistakes. Michael Jordan missed a lot of 3-pointers before hitting the game winners. Right? Kobe Bryant, the same thing. So, Roberto Baggio. I don't know. Were you alive in 1994?
I was 2 years old, or maybe like
2 years old. So Roberto Baggio, 1994 World Cup. It's Italy versus Brazil. It went to penalties, and he missed the biggest penalty of his career.
Oh.
And he came back and played after that. That's not like he quit, right? But like if Roberto Baggio, I don't know why I'm saying his name like that. I feel like I'm more Italian. If Roberto Baggio can miss a penalty like in the World Cup finals and lose the World Cup and still come back to play the next year, we should be able to make mistakes as well, because there's a lot less money at stake at least.
Yep. No, I remember. I think I butchered the quote before, so I won't even try again. But Magic School Bus, both like classic '90s Magic School Bus. Miss Frizzle was all about making mistakes and like getting messy, getting dirty, getting your hands dirty, and that's how you learn, like you said. And I think too, like for a lot of people that do stress about that, know what it takes for you to prepare and try to be as prepared as you can be, just to, like, you know, make you feel like you're ready for that meeting, whatever it is. But then once you're there, yeah, like you said, have fun. Don't worry about making a mistake. It's not the end of the world. And if the company thinks that it is and you get fired, then go to a better company.
Learn from it, man. Like, learn from your mistakes. That's, otherwise you're just never gonna learn anything.
Yeah, all about one's ability to get back up after falling down.
All right, so we're gonna have to wrap this up. Thank you, Benny, for joining me so early this morning. Appreciate it. And thank you for listening. Any feedback, comments, make sure you post it on LinkedIn, post it on the website, Twitter, wherever. I don't know if I'm on Instagram, but anyways, I'm gonna wrap this up. For Benny and his beard, this is Ramsey signing off.